Layla, why don't you introduce yourself to our audience, please?
Yes, I'm Layla, spelled Liala, Amin, Amin. I use she, her pronouns, and we are currently in my very cozy studio space at VAR Studios located on 5th Street. I am what I consider a multidisciplinary artist. I like to do a little bit of everything. I have a lot of background in education as well. Right now, I am focusing on integrating art therapy, which I am studying at Alverno College, into my art practice. But a lot of my work focuses on celebrating womanhood, what it is to be a woman, mental health, and also finding deeper spirituality within yourself. There's been a lot of life changes that have really made me rethink my process. Because even work that I was attracted to this time last year, I don't see myself making again. Just because of how my entire mentality has shifted. I think with having to suddenly mature very quick has been just like, okay, what exactly do I want to do? Because some of those stressors that existed before are not existent right now. So I almost feel like it's not just one thing that's influencing where I want to go. Because getting married is cool, but it wasn't like this. And now everything is. I think it was just a lot of life changes happening. Moving out was a big one.
I feel as if you have a skyrocketed growth spurt, if you will. You know? And I believe that development in life would also show up in your work too, right? At some point, but maybe not, today or tomorrow. But as we gain more experience, I'm pretty sure we'll see an elevation in your work as well.
Yeah, it's for a while, I was definitely attracted to doing my own depictions of mythological women, and now I'm I don't really feel like doing that anymore, or for the time being. Going into art therapy has changed a lot of my insight and my practice, because a lot of art therapy is based off of intuitive, feeling, and using art for healing and healing art. So I think that within the last year, especially, I've kind of moved away from okay, I need to make these myth paintings, and those were fun, but now it's okay, I'm ready for something else.
Absolutely. Especially with having real life experiences, you kind of want to adapt that or put that into your work and express it in some way, shape, or form, right? Mm-hmm. But I guess having mythical creatures provide some type of inspiration to you, you would kind of find a balance, if you will, to merge the two worlds. Honestly, that's quite refreshing for any person, any walk of life who has too much of, or let's say an overdose of the real world. You know what I mean? It's nice to have that breakaway and step into a whimsical rendition of reality, if you will.
It was I think a lot of it was kind of escaping from what was going on presently, because I felt pretty stuck when I was making those paintings, just on a personal level, where it was okay, I am turning 31 or 32 and I'm still living at home, and I have this relationship that I want to move forward, and there were a lot of just boundaries around that. So I was definitely looking into myth as this way to, it's fantasy, where it's okay, well, here was this story, how could I put myself into that story and then make artwork from it. So now that it's okay, well, I'm an adult, so it feels like it now. My work feels like it can be more personal. So there is still that fusion of fantasy elements in a way, or whimsical, I think you had said. I think whimsical is a good way to put it. But now it's just like I want to make work that's actually going to resonate stronger, like with my personal voice versus like before. And no offense to those paintings, it's just like I look at them now and I'm just like, yeah, I like them, but I want to move on.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, they're all beautiful works, and I'm pretty sure even if you've moved on, there's an audience for it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which is also great, because I would say a manifestation is more or less like a fantasy, if you will. It's a dream we'd want to come true. So to put yourself in something mythical or dreamlike is not unrealistic at all. It's honestly something more people can relate to than not, and maybe most aren't talking about it.
Yeah.
But I appreciate you for that.
Yes. Thanks.
So I guess we've already. Do you feel personal responsibility to reflect representation through your work?
I knew this question was going to come up because I've only been asked that question, I think, since I was in art school over 10 years ago, where I felt that obligation to represent my faith and culture, but in a sense that was like palatable, and also I don't know, like I would answer people's questions for them essentially. I personally don't want to do that, and I know that there might be people who will take offense to that. That's fine. I just don't feel like it is my responsibility, just because I so happen to be a Muslim woman who comes from a Middle Eastern background, that my work has to fall into that category, because that's just one part of my life. And honestly, that's the most external part of my life. So it's like, you're already seeing it. I don't need to show it in my artwork. Like if you want to see pictures of like Muslim women, you're not going to get it from me. And I don't really want to make like religious work. I think just because of like personally what I'm trying to get out of my own practice, it's like it wouldn't be doing me any favors if I just kept making like work that was the exact same subject matter over and over and over again. And honestly, I don't like to make work that's political either. I think I can still inject like more serious messages without it being so cliche. Because at a certain point, it's like, is that all you're going to expect of me as an artist? Is like, oh, well, we need you to talk about like women's rights in the Middle East. And it's like, I'm not an expert, and whatever you're going to hear from me is just, it's going to be my opinion still. So I can't represent a whole bunch of other people, and I honestly don't feel comfortable doing that. And I could see how other people would want to do that too, where it's like, well, they have pride in their religion and their culture, and they want to share that with others. But it's like, there's so much other stuff that I want to share with people that's not just like what you already see. So
I respect it big time, seriously. Because with that representation, or with that forced representation to an extent, you would kind of find yourself maybe misrepresenting someone else. You know what I mean? Maybe someone that falls into that class of people, but also doesn't see themselves as this. So I completely respect that. And to stand apart from it, or at least to attempt to paint outside the box, it takes a lot, you know, especially because, like you said, being a Muslim woman is what you see when I'm presented. So why not paint more underneath the surface, more of the onion layers that actually do resemble me, that make me, you know? So kudos. But also, there's a note, because you do paint yourself a lot.
I do.
And that is a Muslim woman we see, beautiful Muslim woman we see in these paintings. So it doesn't have to be like a general representation, but a personal representation for sure.
It's definitely a more personal representation. Because I do reference myself a lot in like portraits, especially, and it's not from like vanity or anything, but it's also just like I paint what's most familiar to me, or what I want to explore all the time. And it's like, well, I want to know who I am more than anything. And especially when it comes to just like, you know, who I am mentally and like trying to find that stability within myself, it's like, well, why wouldn't I represent myself in my work then? So I guess in a way it's like, yeah, if you want to see a Muslim woman, it's like, well, here she is, like, here's my face, and you know, I'm veiled in these works. But there's like I think the intention is so different, because it's like I've also met other Muslim artists who are just like, no, I want to make work that speaks so specifically to what it's like growing up Muslim, like in America. And again, that's fine. But I also think about like, well, who's your audience? And there's this discomfort I have where it's almost like the only time other people will take you seriously is if they can like take advantage of your, you know, generational trauma, so to speak, or your struggle then becomes like their struggle. And it's like, I'm not here to play empathy politics or to try to get people to understand someone else's personal life through my work. It's like I'm here to make work that I'm happy with, and not everyone else is going to be happy with it. And that's kind of where I'm at.
That should be a place where most artists create from, in my opinion, because truly, first and foremost, you should be the primary audience that you're creating for.
Yeah.
If you're not pleased with your work, then I don't think you should be looking to present it to anyone else. It doesn't even really make sense to me. But of course, that's just my opinion. Mm-hmm. But obviously, I'm a big fan. So
yeah.
I mean,
thanks.
Yes, yeah. No, there's beauty in every single piece, in every single detail, and regardless of the background, gender, sexual orientation, I believe that there is something for everyone in each piece. It's incredible. Okay, of course. Any earlier influences that you'd like to note?
Yeah. So I always find this question like difficult to answer because I've put a lot of effort into not finding inspiration with art history because it's been presented so linear. And you know, coming from my perspective, where it's like when you're in a class and they're talking about like, here are all the art movements, it's very Eurocentric and it's very male centered, and you only see like the surface of what's going on. So I spent a lot of time like outside of school, like when I graduated the first time, going like, I don't want to have any kind of artistic influence. Like there's things that I can enjoy on an aesthetic level, but to say like, oh, I want to, you know, emulate this person's work within my work, I was just like, I don't want to do that. And just like how male artists have kind of taken over art history too, I've also never been a fan of. So my inspirations, like early inspirations, have really just been from myself, like weird dreams that I've had, or like stories that I've heard, or just kind of like from like journaling has been a big one. And I've told a lot of people, even from the start of my art practice, where it's like I look at my artwork as like visual journaling. So it's like I don't want it to look like anyone else. And I've had people compare it to other artists before. Like I've heard, oh, your work reminds me of like Gustav Klimt, and I'm like, cool, but it's not. Like I'm not trying to purposely make it look like someone else. So I would say now that a lot of my inspiration, and even like if I'm looking back, it's like, where have I looked for? And it's like, well, I've always looked for like what's within me first. So it's kind of like, how can I draw this emotion? Like, what would that look like to me without having to refer to what art history has kind of dictated as like, well, this is how art's supposed to be, and here's who you should look to as inspirations. I honestly, I find inspiration kind of like everywhere. So people that I meet, or it's like random things that I see, or like things that I read. and I'm trying to keep like my inner child alive in a sense, because my like childhood was so like creatively free, and it's like I want to be able to still have that, like,
absolutely,
even as I get older, where it's like I want to be able to do like weird things, because as a kid that's okay, but suddenly when you become an adult, it's like, oh no, you have to, like, your work has to be very refined, and it's like, I don't know, I want to have fun with this, and I want to make like my 5-year-old self proud.
Absolutely. And admirable on many levels, because I feel as if, especially when a lot of artists are burned out and they're like desperate for inspiration, they will mimic, and copy and borrow until they can't any longer. And the fact that your creative process is coming from an original place, a path in which you're painting, you know what I mean? Creating your own way, I think that's beautiful. And hopefully more artists are practicing that same method, because I feel, unfortunately, even though we are seeing like this boom of, explosive artwork, we are seeing a lot of repeats. You know what I mean? There are so many Rothko wannabes. There are so many, Frankenthaler wannabes. There are so many people who are looking to mimic and emulate instead of, painting or stepping into their own right, if you will, as artists. So stellar work. Kudos, pat on the back.
Yeah. It's definitely, I've gotten some pushback from a few people, not many, honestly, but I have had people say, like other artists say, like, you need to know what your voice is, and like you need to know who your inspirations are, and it's just like, why? It gets so boring after a while. Like what you're saying, it's like, who wants to make the same thing over and over and over again, in the same style with the same medium? It's like, at a certain point you're gonna get bored, and then what? So
yeah, maybe find a new medium.
Yeah.
I don't know. If you could give advice to a young woman or a young man, young person who's looking to find their own creative path, whether it be in any form, medium, music, media, is there any type of feedback or advice you'd give?
Yeah. One thing, and this is also where it's like, I wish someone would have told me this, is like, it's okay to make something you're not happy with. Not everything is going to be stellar. You're going to make some really ugly, just like bad artistic decisions in your life. Whether that be like, oh, I thought this painting was going to turn out one way and now it didn't, or like, I'm going to experiment with something new and it just like didn't work out. I think embracing failure is necessary, and especially with like the creative world, you are going to be facing a lot of failure. Like, not everyone's going to like what you do, or you make all this work and like none of it sells, or like people don't know who you are, even though you're like working so much. I think just embracing that, it's like, okay, what is it that you want? Because it always comes back to the self. It always comes back to like, why did I start doing this in the first place? No one told me to become an artist. I wanted to. And even when people are saying like, you're not going to make a lot of money doing this, or like, you can use it as a hobby, like, why would you try to turn it into some kind of career? I've always just been like, but this is what I want. And I've always gone back to that, even when things have gone like terrible, where it's like, I didn't get into this show, or people responded very badly to something that I made. It's like, well, I think it's going back to that like inner child, where it's like, well, how can I still foster that creativity that has freedom to it? So this bit of a long answer, but I would say like, just like, embrace failure. It's fine, and you have to do it for you. You can't do it for anyone else, because if you don't have your own support, like, you can't always find external validation for things.
Absolutely. Going back to like creating from that childish or that childlike place, if you will, that place of innocence. That's what it truly is. Growing up, you kind of shed that innocence, and it also sheds imagination as well. So it's kind of harder to create when you're like looking at gray or you know, the news, for instance, or anything that's negative, that we're kind of like forced to embrace to some extent or another. How do you find your way back to that place after? I'm curious.
Honestly, I still doodle and scribble, and I don't find any shame in doing things that people would kind of categorize as like, oh, that's like really immature or childish, where it's just like, why shouldn't I be able to like go on a walk by the beach and like skip rocks by myself? It's like still having that wonder for things amongst all of the very loud noise is what helps me kind of keep that inner child alive, or listening to her too. And you know, now that I've really been integrating a lot of like art therapy techniques and thought into my process, I've found that to be just like becoming more natural, where it's like, okay, you know, what do I need? Like, what does my inner child need? How can I do that? Sometimes it's not art making. Sometimes it's like, I need to read something that's like totally goofy, or just like that's not so serious all the time. Right. I think adulthood is so serious, and you know, there are very serious parts to it, but if you're just like going through it like go, you're going to get to a point, hopefully, you know, not towards the end of your life, where it's like, well, what did I do? Like, you know, what joy did I have for the last like X amount of years? And I'm seeing certain family members who are having that same thought right now, where it's like they spent so much of their adulthood being an adult, which is like no fun at all. And now they're like, you know, what have I accomplished really for myself? So yeah, just like it's like, it really is just like finding those like little things that bring you some kind of like feeling, like it could be joy or calm or something else, to really keep yourself activated inside.
Absolutely. And speaking of joy and calm, because it sounds like an art therapist I'm talking to.
Yeah.
Truly. How has that rerouted your creative path as well? Do you feel like you're painting more, or not more, but I guess less for purpose and more for mental stability or mental health?
Absolutely I am. I would say my most personal work has been a result of me like going into art therapy, like studying art therapy, because you can't be so shielded or guarded from yourself. It's like, if I want to be able to help people in the future, I can't you know, keep myself closed up. So I like challenged myself quite a bit, and I was like, you know, what is something that I would like to talk about in my artwork that I haven't, out of fear of judgment, or like people aren't going to understand. So a lot of like my own like mental health, you know, treatment and struggles, and just like how I've tried to navigate life having like a diagnosed mental illness, has like, how can I put that into my work, basically.
Right.
And like, for full disclosure, I mean, I feel totally comfortable talking about it. So I received a diagnosis of borderline personality disorder, probably about like 2 years ago now. And it was one of those like clarity moments where I was like, oh my God, so much of myself suddenly like, I was like, whoa, that suddenly makes so much sense. Like, my emotional reactions to things have always been very intense. And to hear that coming from a professional who I have known for a while now, I was like, oh my God, like, how did I not see this before? So I think that's what really kickstarted like okay, I have this phrase that would explain what I'm going through daily, you know, and I have this art practice that I want to use as a way to explain what I'm going through daily. And now I'm going into a professional field where I will have to help people with whatever they're going through daily, you know, in the future. So it just made sense for me to represent that in my work and whatever that looked like to me. And I think that's kind of like where more of that like freedom and like fluidity started coming in. So much of BPD is like splitting things into extremes, like very black and white. And it's like, well, I don't want to approach life like that. So why don't I use my artwork as a way to just like process it?
Right.
So it's not so much like the product now, but the process of making that I've integrated into what I'm doing. And it's been fun and really, really, really helpful for sure. Just like having that focus has been helpful.
I can believe it. Just sharing that story, of course, art and therapy, right? I love both. And merging them, honestly, the best of both worlds. I hope more therapists have like an interest in expanding that practice into something more creative. Because I think they'll honestly see maybe more breakthroughs, especially with children.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
But that's a whole nother topic for another time, of course. I would love to get back more into that another time, but okay. I'm sorry, I'm still here in this art therapy because it's so meaningful, it's so purposeful. It truly, to me, it truly explores avenues of healing instead of just treatment. You know what I mean? So that touches me. It's near and dear to my heart. So now that we've shared so much of your personal and professional works, how could people stay apprised of all things Layla?
Yeah, so you can find me on social media. I do have an Instagram, and it's Layla the Creative. My name is spelled Liala, just FYI. A lot of people search for it, they're like, I couldn't find it. It's like, you got to switch the I and the A around. And I also have my website where I keep all of my finished work on there. It's kind of like my portfolio. So anything that you don't see hanging up and you're just like, where can I find more? My website has everything, and I've just updated it. So all of my current work is there. But yeah, shoot me a message on Instagram. I love to talk art with people, and obviously like art therapy now has been kind of like the new introduction to what I'm doing. So I am always very excited to share that with other people, because it doesn't always have to be called like art therapy. It could just be like healing arts as therapy. So, you know, it's like whatever that creative outlet is for you, it's like, how could you use that to better your wellness in the end? So people talk to me, basically.
I love that. If nothing else, though, I do want to thank you immensely for your time. You're a wonderful person. I know you personally, but now the world and other folks who need to know you will now know who you are. And I appreciate this. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for, you know, inviting me to your space. And I hope that you found some inspiration, and you can take that inspiration and now give it onto other people. That's really what I want to do, is just like, you can find something that inspires you, and it's like kind of paying it forward after everything.
Absolutely. I have no doubt that you're doing that, honestly.
Thanks.
Seriously. I'm getting all types of warm and positive vibes from your works in here. I think I'm just gonna leave with this huge, or this really powerful femme.
Yeah,
superpower.
Lots of women.
Yes. No, I love it. Truly.
Thank you.
No, thank you.
What I'm gonna paint them. What are they? They're little dolls.
Oh, these are cool.
Yeah, so this actually started because of an art therapy class. So I had to create, it's a long story. I had to observe a student that I worked with, and I had to create a response piece based off of them. And the student in particular, he's very sweet, likes to make dolls. Like, almost like, I don't know what I would even call them, like, moved it so much that I've just been making these, people were asking me questions like, how come you don't draw men? And I was like, why would I?
Oh my goodness, seriously.
Aren't they drawing men?
Yeah. I was just like, I don't like it when men draw pictures of women. Why would I draw a picture of a man? No.